Hi. Hello. So we are here today as representatives of SISSTER, which stands for Sororities Invested in Survivor Support, Training, and Ending Rape Culture, and the Health Promotion Department at SDSU. I'm Jessie. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Theta.
I'm Jan, and I'm also a part of Kappa Alpha Theta.
I'm Alexa, and I'm also a member of Kappa Alpha Theta.
Okay. So before we get started, I just wanted to say that obviously this is a little different than it normally is, like being on Zoom and recording this. So just bear with us. This presentation was meant to be more interactive, so we're just gonna try our best to kind of change those parts to just be more informational. So just bear with us as we are working on that. Okay, so we are here because we care about ending rape and sexual violence and helping survivors on our campus and in our community. Although many of us have personal experience with this issue, and we all have gone through at least a semester of intensive training in sexual assault and its surrounding issues, we want to acknowledge that we are not experts. We simply have information we want to present and specific things we want to discuss. But we want you to be assured that we will tell you where our knowledge ends and connect you with resources to answer any questions you might have. So we are going to have some ground rules. Obviously, some of them don't really apply since this is not an in-person interactive presentation. But first, and most importantly, we realize the topic of sexual assault and sexual violence may be a trigger for some people in the audience, meaning that it may cause those who have experienced sexual assault, dealt with sexual assault, or have a connection to assault in any way to have a negative reaction to the presentation or experience upsetting emotions. If you find yourself in this circumstance, please feel free to, pause the presentation or skip to a different part, anything that makes you feel comfortable. And please use SDSU's Counseling and Psychological Services as a resource if you are struggling with emotions concerning sexual assault. Please see us or contact us at the end of the presentation for any of that contact information. Whatever personal things are said in this presentation are confidential. Although we may speak about sexual assault as being more statistically prevalent with a female victim and a male perpetrator, we are not assuming any sexual preference. And if you guys have any questions, you can totally just reach out to us. Obviously, there won't be any questions during the presentation, but yeah. Okay, hopefully we all agree to that. So now we have a video to share with you. Okay, there we go. To share with you that we think really relates to the importance of the conversations we will be having today throughout this presentation.
Team versus team.
That's as good as it gets.
Oh man, I've never had more fun my whole life.
Daddy's had a beer. I'm gonna go to another one. Hey.
Get your card?
No, Lamorne, stop doing magic. You're not good at it. Guys! Oh, dude! There's a bear in your other room here. What? Oh, that's just...
So we just like to show that video because it's a kind of like a funny representation of the reality of this issue. So it is an issue that affects everyone in some way, and society can't ignore that it's happening.
Okay, to start the program, we would like to get an idea of your own opinions. Let's find out now how you feel about men, women, and sex. There are no right or wrong answers in this activity. It's important that everyone is honest with themselves and how they feel about each one of these statements. I'm going to ask you to reflect on each one of the following statements. I will read each statement twice. You must decide if you agree, disagree, or are unsure about each statement. Stranger rape is more traumatic than acquaintance rape. In most sexual situations, the man is expected to initiate action and the woman sets the boundaries. I would not be too concerned if my friend was going to hook up with someone who was drunk. Every person is a potential rapist. It is easier to believe that a victim has been raped if she fights back during the rape. If one of my close friends was raped and I knew about it, I would report the incident. People are safer from sexual assault at certain fraternities. It concerns me that one of my sisters or I will be falsely accused of sexual assault. I typically keep my eye out for potential sexual assault situations at parties. Now we'd like for you to take a moment to reflect on how you felt about this activity. Although we can agree for the most part that assault is wrong and should be stopped, there's a lot of room for individual thought, perspective, and opinion about topics surrounding sexual violence.
When we say the word sexual violence, people tend to think of a lot of different meanings, and that's totally okay. It's a really generic term, and it can take on different meanings to different people. Today, we want to get on the same page about what sexual violence means here at SDSU and universities across the nation. A consistent definition is needed for universities to keep track of sexual violence on their campuses and track trends over time. It helps determine the magnitude of the problem throughout the country. And having clear definitions also helps to identify any risk factors and protective factors, and hopefully can help us to have programming and environments here that prevent sexual assault. Sexual violence. This is the umbrella term that rape, sexual harassment, sexual assault, or battery, stalking, and all dating violence fall under. Sexual violence is any sexual act that is perpetrated against someone's will, encompasses a range of offenses, including completed non-consensual sex act, an attempted non-consensual sex act, abusive sexual content, non-contact sexual abuse. All types involve victims who do not consent or who are unable to consent or refuse to allow the act. Please be aware that sexual violence is not always men assaulting women. Women can assault women, men can assault men. You don't have to be gay or lesbian for this to happen. And be aware that women assault men too. This is a real thing, and it happens more than is reported. We want you to know that anyone can be a victim of assault, regardless of your gender, sex, or sexual orientation. We want you to understand that we are not avoiding using terms like rape or sexual assault. We're just trying to use language consistent with the university. Feel free to use any terminology that resonates with you.
So now we're going to talk about, consent. So another important thing to understand when it comes to university policy is consent. And when we think about consent, we need to understand that yes means yes. In January 2015, the California Senate Bill 967 was passed into law. It requires all universities that receive financial aid to use a standard of affirmative consent in disciplinary hearings about sexual assault. In a nutshell, it shifts things from did anyone say no to did everyone say yes. So we're going to talk about exactly what affirmative consent means. So according to the text in the bill, affirmative consent means affirmative, conscious, and voluntary agreement to engage in sexual activity. This means that we are looking for affirmative consent. The absence of a no is not simply enough. This means you cannot move forward and wait until you hear a no from your partner to stop. So, obtaining consent. You need to understand that consent should be obtained by the person who is initiating sexual activity. Should be an ongoing and obtained for each new sex act, can be revoked at any time, and it cannot be given when someone is intoxicated to the point of incapacitation. But what exactly does that look like? So we're going to talk about some examples of how someone can ask for consent. So one example would be, do you want to have sex? Something that is not consent, an example. So for example, if someone were to say, is this okay with you? That's not obtaining consent. It's great that they are asking questions and communicating, but this question implies that some act has already occurred and you are asking if they are comfortable with something that already or is still occurring. It has to be before the sex act occurs. You can ask yes or no questions like, can we have sex? Or do you want to keep going and have sex? These are awesome because they're straightforward and clear. If you're apprehensive about asking these questions, you can use icebreakers like, do you have a condom? Or should we go to my room? These are great warm-ups, but you still need to ask for consent so that there's no misinterpretation. You can also ask questions like, what are your expectations for the night? Or what are you comfortable doing? These questions are good because they give you and your partner room to discuss boundaries and expectations and possibly have a very enjoyable sexual encounter where you get everything you wanted out of the experience. There is a catch though. You need to know and be comfortable with your expectation and boundaries, which is something many women are not completely comfortable with. How can you expect to have an open and honest conversation with your partner if you can't answer these questions yourself? So now we want you guys to just kind of think to yourself about what are some ways that we could all get better about acknowledging our own sexual boundaries and expectations? And is there anything that would help you feel more confident about expressing these boundaries or expectations? So just kind of think that to yourself, and we're going to talk about what we came up with. So some of our ideas is to talk about sex more openly and frequently in general. Talk to your girlfriends about your intentions and expectations as part of your pregame or getting ready routine. That is a really good way to kind of know your boundaries and talk about it with your friends who you should be comfortable with talking about sex. And then that can get you more comfortable kind of talking about it with your sexual partner. Make sure you know what your friends want so you can help them make decisions if they're selective in the moment, and then practice saying what you want. If you can get it out awkwardly to your friend, you can probably say it to a partner. So, interpreting and giving consent. So now we know what asking for consent looks like, but the next step is to interpret whether or not someone is giving consent in response to a question. So we're gonna let you know some examples of ways that someone could give consent in response to a question. So according to Yes Means Yes, consent can be given verbally or non-verbally, but don't forget it needs to be in response to a verbal question. So talking does need to take place in the encounter. Following a question, a yes, I'm down, or hell yeah are all great examples of verbal consent. The more enthusiastic, the better. For nonverbal, nodding the head, moving your body closely and very clearly in response to a question, or giving a thumbs up or a high five, whatever you feel like, are all ways of giving consent. Again, the more enthusiastic, the better. Just to be clear, verbal consent is definitely the more clear way of giving consent. Although nonverbal works too, verbal is the most clear. So it can be easy to misunderstand or misinterpret nonverbal cues and body language. So if you're ever in doubt, just ask for a verbal cue. And do your best to get your partner communicating with you verbally. Also, please realize that if somebody asks for consent, responding verbally is a great way to keep the conversation going. Be aware that saying, yes, I want to hook up can mean about a billion things, so clarify every step of the way. Some people might feel like this consent is awkward, but think about it as a chance to discuss your wants and desires with your partner or partners. Sex is about having a pleasurable experience, so talk about what you like and make sure everyone is having a great time. As we mentioned a bit earlier, if someone is intoxicated to the point of incapacitation, they cannot give consent. So we want to talk about how many drinks it takes for someone to be drunk to the point that they cannot consent. So there really is no exact recipe. It depends on the person. There's no recipe for how many drinks someone can have before they are incapacitated to the point of not being able to formulate thoughts or make decisions. So that translates to better be safe than sorry. If someone appears like they are actually drunk, play it safe and revisit the idea of engaging in sexual activity with them at another time. Now, if you are watching a situation unfold where two people are wasted, neither can consent. So do the right thing and get them apart. They might be mad at the moment, but they will likely forget about it soon after, if they remember at all. Now we're going to talk about coercion. There may be times you have sex with someone, but it's not because you wanted to have sex with them. This is where coercion comes in, and it's a very important part of sexual violence. Coercion can be a lot of things, and we're going to let you know of some examples. So anytime someone feels like they can't say no or that they must say yes, this is coercion. Coercing someone into sex means that they feel threatened, intimidated, or are being manipulated in any way into having sex or even agreeing to have sex. This can range from feeling like the person might physically harm them, so they say yes, or it can be because they think someone might spread a rumor about them, or maybe they are just intimidated because of someone's size or aggression. So a common example of this would be maybe two people are dating and one partner tells the other partner that they have to have sex with them or else they'll break up with them. That is coercion. It is not okay to coerce someone into having sex with you, and it is not okay for someone to coerce you into something. Coercion is sexual assault and it is a crime. Coercion often happens in relationships. If coercion is occurring, this could be a sign of an unhealthy relationship or dating abuse. Just like sexual assault, manipulating or controlling your partners is not okay. Many of the resources for dating violence are the same as those for sexual violence, and we will be going over all of those later in the presentation. Now we want to show you a quick video that really does a great job of summarizing consent.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they go, "Oh my God, fuck yes, I would fucking love a cup of tea. Thank you." Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you could make them a cup of tea or not, but be aware they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important part, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you are entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say no, thank you, then don't make them tea at all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, "Yes, please. That's kind of you." And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time that it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind. And you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea. And they can't answer the question, "Do you want tea?" because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea. And they said yes. But in the time it took you to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down. Make sure the unconscious person is safe. And this is the important part again. Don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they're safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it going, "But you wanted tea last week." Or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, "But you wanted tea last night." But if you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you're able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand it when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea.
Okay, now on to intervention and prevention and party environments. First, we'll be showing you a few statistics regarding sexual assault. 75% of male students and 55% of female students involved in date rape had been using drugs or alcohol. In 9 out of 10 rapes or assaults that take place on campus, the victim knew the assailant. 68% of rapes occur between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Surveys say 60% of college rapes occur in a survivor's home, 31% in other on-campus housing, and less than 10% occurred in a fraternity house. Specifically at SDSU, almost all sexual assault investigations involved alcohol. Looking at these statistics, where is a common place at universities and SDSU where many of these factors may converge and occur at the same time? We think it's common that many of these overlap in a party environment. Think back to the parties that you have attended yourself. Now we'd like for you to think about situations that you have noticed at a party and may increase the risk of sexual violence. Situations like these would include a scenario that you thought felt creepy, or a situation that seemed like both parties were fine, but it might end up badly. Some of these scenarios are supposed to be monitored or watched by sober sisters or risk management, but it's insane to think that 1 to 3 people can control a whole party. So we should understand that we need to have a better risk than just a couple of people watching out for one thing. Additionally, the bystander effect is at play. The more people that are in a situation, the less chances anyone will help. This is definitely prevalent at a party, and this means we should be aware that this effect is active and go out of our comfort zones and not just stand by if someone feels or seems wrong. We need to watch out for things and actively help them. There's a lot of risk associated with a party, and the statistics suggest there's an increased chance of an assault occurring, so it's only fair that we actively assist and support risk reduction efforts. Okay, so now we'd like for you to pick 2 things from the list. Come up with a tangible solution or one that can actively intervene to prevent assault or stop that situation from occurring. Some solutions that we came up with include not leaving your sisters behind. Talk to your sisters and make a plan. Make a plan about sexual boundaries and your expectations. When people want to leave, or under what circumstances you are going to leave. Another thing would be cock blocking, breaking up an encounter with either one person or both people who are way too wasted at a party. Check in with people if they've had too much to drink or look uncomfortable. Again, this might seem awkward, but who cares, as long as you're safe. Even if you know them, get in there and check in on them. Make sure that fraternities are providing risk reduction strategies to prevent over-intoxication. Make sure that your sorority and Panhellenic is working together with the fraternities. Be on call for all women. Don't leave anyone behind. Stay with someone who appears too drunk until you can find help for them. If an assault occurs, it affects all of us. It alters the life of the survivor forever, and it changes the culture and dynamic of the community. This is a crime and has ripple effects. It's impossible for just a few people to prevent everything. We all have to work together to help and watch out and prevent assault by getting involved and intervening whenever we can.
Okay, so now we want to talk about rape culture and prevention. We want to talk about prevention and shifting the cultural norms. For years, the media and pop culture focus on what women can do to protect themselves from rape and sexual assault, but that is not what we want to focus on right now. Today, we're going to talk about some things as a community and in our environment we can do to help end sexual violence and rape culture. Some definitions that we have found that summarize rape culture pretty well is rape culture is a complex set of beliefs that encourage male sexual aggression and supports violence against women. Rape culture includes jokes, TV, music, advertising, laws, words that make violence against women and sexual coercion seem so normal that people believe that rape is inevitable. Rather than viewing the culture of rape as a problem, people in a rape culture think about the persistence of rape as just the way things are. So a couple of ways that we have identified rape culture in our society is lack of rapists being convicted, saying things like she was asking for it, or well, did she drink too much, or other victim blaming statements. catcalling, media portraying violence against women, objectifying women in media at parties, or making light of sexual assault or making rape jokes. So again, we want you to kind of think about these things for yourself. What can we do as a group or as individuals to combat rape culture and ultimately help prevent sexual violence? So some solutions that we came up with are: use consent in your sexual encounters, insist on it, ask questions yourself, communicate as much as possible. The more we talk about sex, especially with partners, the less awkward it will be to use consent in intimate situations. Don't have a false sense of security. There are really no completely safe spaces. We don't want women to be constantly afraid. We want people to be on the lookout for potentially dangerous situations or places that can have intervention. Be aware of your own language regarding other women's sexual activity. Be aware of your own language regarding assault victims. Don't make any rape jokes. Call people out on language that they use. Speak up against rape myths. And don't second guess survivors.
So we discussed what we can do to prevent sexual assault. Now let's talk about helping survivors. So let's talk about how you can help a survivor of sexual violence or assault. The first thing we want you to do is listen. It is very difficult for most survivors to share their story, whether the event just happened or if it was something that occurred in the past. By actively listening to what they are telling you, you can show them you care, and this can assist you in the next step, which is believe. The second thing you should do is believe the survivor. It is not your job to investigate, ask for specific details, or try to figure out what happened. If they trust you enough to come to you, show them you care by believing them and not questioning what they are telling you. The third thing you should do is connect them with resources and support their decision. Each survivor will have a different reaction to their assault because it is a very personal crime. As a result, there is no single resource that will be the best option for every survivor. You want to give them all of their options and support whichever option they feel is best, even if it is not what you would choose. What they do next is their choice. At SDSU, we take an empowerment model approach, meaning we believe you should never tell a survivor what they must do or should do. This approach puts all the decision-making power in the hands of the survivor.
Now on to resources. It's important that you can help survivors gain access to local resources. Let's talk about a few for sexual assault or rape survivors in our community. The first one we want to highlight is the main space to get resources on campus, sdu.sdsu.edu. This website will have all of the resources we will discuss today with information on how to contact all of them. The next resource is the Title IX coordinator and deputy coordinators, specifically Lee Mintz, who is picked here. They can help people with investigating the incident that occurred at SDSU, or they can just help survivors with interim remedies, things like changing classes, moving housing, providing them academic support, or helping connect them with other resources. Additionally, there's also Sarah Vogel, the SDSU Title IX investigator, which is not pictured here. Next resource would be the counseling and psychological services, who can help with the emotional and mental well-being of the victim, and can help considering options if the individual wants to seek action or other resources. They are confidential, meaning nothing said will leave their room. The next resource is the SDSU sexual assault victim advocate, Lauren Merko, who can meet with the survivor confidentially and can help them navigate their options moving forward. Jenny is the employee of the Center of Community Solutions, an off-campus resources, but she is stationed here at SDSU. She is also confidential. Again, nothing you tell her will leave the room. The university police will help with the health and safety of the victim and can help the survivor want to take any legal action against the perpetrator. They even have a detective who specializes in sex crimes. The resource is Student Health Services, who can help with prophylactic medications for STIs or pregnancy and can offer pregnancy tests. Please be aware that you need to contact the university police if someone reports them. Lastly, survivors can also access resources off campus, the Center for Community Solutions. This is the largest resource for dating violence and sexual violence victims in San County. They have a lot of resources, including an after-hours hotline. You can tell people about all of these resources, direct them to the website, or go to the website with them if that's what they'd like. You can also accompany them to appointments if they need your support. Remember, the most important part of helping a survivor is letting them know that they do not have to do any of this alone. When you are supporting a survivor, you need to remember that your support requires the time that they tell you the incident and long after. It applies not only to an individual, but to the chapter as a whole. We need to support survivors through their entire emotional recovery investigation.
So just to conclude our presentation, we really know that this was a lot of information at once. Again, sdsU.sdsu.edu is a really great place to kind of find everything we talked about today if something stuck out for you. Also, just remember to listen, believe, and support survivors. You never know if someone decides to open up to you. And it's important to be able to take care of them and also take care of yourself and your friends. And yeah, if you need any resources, you can contact one of us or somebody like a professor in your class. And thanks for tuning in. We hope you guys are staying safe and taking care of your physical and mental health.